Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Miss Laura Lorraine in Don't Carry Tales. All right?
Betty
Take it
Grable
away,
died
Charlie.
on the 2nd of July, 1973, at just 56 years old, and for 14 days before her death. Almost no one knew she was dying. The cause was lung cancer, but there were 0 public medical bulletins, 0 interviews, 0 hospital photos, 0 farewell statements. In the final 2 weeks, Hollywood received no warning signal, no leaks, no serious condition headlines, no prepared obituaries. One of the most photographed women of the 20th century vanished from the news cycle completely, while a terminal illness progressed in silence. When the announcement finally came, the shock wasn't just the diagnosis, it was the math behind it. A decade-long box office queen, a World War II icon seen by millions, reduced to one line in the papers explaining a disease no one had been told existed. The numbers didn't add up, and that silence became the loudest story of all. No public warning signs. In the 14 days leading up to the 2nd of July, 1973, Hollywood recorded a shocking number: 0. 0 emergency hospital reports, 0 statements from family or representatives, 0 press leaks, 0 obituary preparations. For a star of Betty Grable's magnitude, this was statistically and culturally abnormal. In early 1970 seconds, Hollywood major figures rarely died without advance signals. Even when illnesses were kept discreet, the press usually picked up indirect indicators, canceled appearances, postponed projects, a vague line confirming someone was under medical care. In Grable's case, none of that happened. For 2 full weeks, she simply did not appear in the news cycle, and in Hollywood's media logic, absence without explanation is not treated as danger, it is treated as irrelevance. Her name did not surface in entertainment columns. No health concerns were raised. No editors flagged her as a potential breaking story. This is where the shock truly forms. When Betty Grable died, newsrooms were caught completely unprepared. There were no background packets, no timeline of decline, no contextual reporting already in place. Her death arrived as a single, abrupt data point: 56 years old, lung cancer, deceased with no visible lead-up. The number 14 becomes crucial here. 14 days is long enough for Hollywood's media machine to detect a crisis. Yet, in Grable's case, those days passed without triggering a single warning mechanism. She was never categorized as critically ill, never placed on a mental list of vulnerable icons. The result was a posthumous realization that Betty Grable had slipped off the industry's radar entirely. Not because of scandal, not because of controversy, but because silence had been mistaken for stability until it was too late. Lung cancer kept almost completely secret. The official cause of death was lung cancer, but until the 2nd of July, 1973, that diagnosis existed in near total secrecy. The most shocking number is not medical, it is informational. 0. 0 public acknowledgements of illness. 0 interviews describing treatment. 0 statements framing her condition as serious. 0 attempts to prepare the public for what was coming. In early 1970 seconds Hollywood, this level of silence was increasingly rare. By that time, many public figures had begun to manage illness through visibility, carefully worded interviews, controlled press statements, or at minimum, a confirmation that someone was battling a disease. These narratives served a dual purpose, maintaining relevance while shaping legacy. Betty Grable chose none of it. For the final 14 days of her life, the media asked no questions because there was no data to trigger them. No health update, no insider tip, no softened language hinting at decline. As a result, the press never moved her into the mental category of at risk. She remained statistically invisible. When the death notice appeared age 56, lung cancer, it compressed an entire medical reality into one sentence. The illness had no timeline in the public record, no duration, no visible progression. The story jumped instantly from nothing to report to death confirmed. This created a sharp numerical imbalance in coverage. 100% of public attention focused on the end. 0% addressed the process that led there. Only after the 7th of February, 1973 did the questions explode. How long had she been sick? How advanced was the cancer? Who knew? When did treatment begin? These questions flooded newsrooms after the fact, when answers could no longer change the outcome, only expose the absence of earlier scrutiny. The secrecy produced a paradox. By protecting her private life, Betty Grable erased the middle of her story from public memory. The disease existed in real time, but not in recorded time. The result was a historical gap measured not in days, but in awareness. In numerical terms, the shock is simple: a terminal illness, a 14-day silent window, and a legacy moment reduced to a single announcement. Hollywood didn't just miss the warning signs, it missed the entire equation. A symbol of vitality in direct collision with death. For the public, Betty Grable was never associated with decline. The numbers tied to her image told a different story, one of strength, continuity, and optimism. At her peak, she dominated the American box office for 10 consecutive years, from 1942 to 1951, a span few performers of any era have matched. During World War II, her pin-up image circulated by the millions, becoming one of the most reproduced photographs of the 20th century. This was not an image of fragility. It was an image of reassurance. That is what made the final number so jarring: 56. 56 is young by any standard, but especially young when measured against the frozen memory the public still held. In collective consciousness, Grable remained locked in her 1,940 seconds prime, smiling, athletic, luminous. The math didn't align. A woman who had defined vitality for an entire generation was not supposed to die quietly of lung cancer before reaching 60. This created a violent contrast between historical data and biological reality. On one side were the numbers of her legacy: a decade at the top, wartime morale impact across continents, a career that shaped an era. On the other side was a single medical statistic: terminal illness revealed only at the moment of death. The gap between those two sets of numbers was where the shock lived. Media coverage after the 2nd of July 1973 reflected this recalibration. Reporters were forced to rewrite her narrative retroactively, compressing a life defined by energy into an ending defined by mortality. The public had no visual reference for her illness, no gradual adjustment period. The transition from icon of health to victim of cancer occurred instantly, without stages. The paradox becomes numerical when reduced to its core elements: 10 years of dominance versus 0 years of visible decline, millions who knew her image versus almost no one who knew she was sick. A legacy built on movement and color, ending in a still frame. This wasn't just a tragic death, it was a statistical contradiction. The public memory said endurance, the medical reality said vulnerability. And because those two truths never overlapped in real time, Betty Grable's death felt less like an ending and more like a rupture, where the numbers simply refused to add up. Hollywood realized too late she had vanished from the spotlight. Only after Betty Grable's death on the 2nd of July 1973 did Hollywood confront an uncomfortable number: how long she had already been gone, not from life, but from attention. In the final 14 days, she attended 0 major industry events. Her name appeared in 0 front-page entertainment stories. There were 0 public conversations asking where she was, what she was doing, or whether she was well. For a woman who once dominated the box office for 10 straight years, this silence was mathematically staggering. The system that once tracked her every move no longer counted her presence at all. In Hollywood's attention economy, absence without noise is not flagged as loss, it is ignored. The media reaction tells the story in reverse. Within hours of her death, headlines multiplied. Retrospectives flooded newspapers. Careers were recalculated. Her impact on World War II morale was remeasured. The number of articles written after July 2 far exceeded those written about her in the months before. Attention returned instantly, but only once it was irreversible. This created a stark imbalance. Years of cultural dominance followed by weeks of total invisibility. Millions of remembered images contrasted with 0 current relevance. Hollywood did not lose Betty Grable suddenly. It lost track of her gradually and only recognized that loss once death forced a recount. There was no scandal to explain the silence, no controversy to justify the neglect, just a slow fading from the center of the frame. The final shock wasn't her death at 56. It was the realization that the spotlight had already moved on quietly, efficiently, and without leaving a trace long before anyone thought to look back. Betty Grable's story does not end with scandal, collapse, or disgrace. It ends with arithmetic. 14 days of silence, 0 warnings, 1 announcement. A woman who defined vitality for a generation vanished without a headline until death forced Hollywood to look back. Her legacy reminds us that fame is not measured by how brightly someone once shined, but by how quietly they are allowed to fade. The question left behind isn't how Betty Grable died. It's how an industry built on attention can lose sight of its own icons long before the final date is ever printed.